I'm just saying, I don't think anybody's enforcing it like they used to.
I got trampoline sticks out. Until they tear the poles off again. My kids actually tearing the poles off.
Yeah.
You're live? You're live.
You're live today.
Everyone's live right now. What am I doing? Okay, so
Like this, and then if they post it, I have it on it. It is so. Great story. You know, why would anyone make a cruise? I mean, for God's sake. We gotta see what happened in Climate.
So when did that happen?
Like 3 weeks ago.
I mean,
Oh, my eighth
first
day.
day,
No,
eighth
eighth
day.
day. I was completely busy. My eighth day, it was a
I was very excited to see the leagues meet in June here. That's really cool.
Yeah,
Last time
we're excited.
it was, I didn't talk about that one.
Yeah, they were excited about it. At the District 1 lunch, yeah, everyone was saying they're excited
I
about that.
lost the country club. Talk to the room service people with enough people on the phone.
Are you gonna be at the main installation?
No. I'll be,
Bizarre.
I'll be in Seattle. Mitty will be
I
there.
haven't been there since pre-COVID.
Yeah, I've never been
Oh,
to
really?
the Pacific or the Northwest.
For 11 years, I loved it.
I can't wait. So excited.
All vacation or work?
No,
Nice.
no.
Very nice.
Yeah, so Mitty will be at the installation, but I'll be back. Back on June 3rd, which I think is that Monday.
The only thing that happened
It should be kind of at the time where the weather could be a hit or miss, but it's like spring there. It's like everything blooms. So it's usually like everything should be in bloom. It's really pretty. I don't know if the tulips is still be there. Have you heard about the tulip? It's like
Oh, yeah?
crazy tulip yield. It's like an hour and a half ago. I don't know if they'll still be there in May. They might be gone. You should look at it because they're beautiful. It's just like fields of rainbows. It's
We
just
had
all
tulips
tulips.
in Virginia in the spring.
So cool. They don't last long.
But they're beautiful when
Yeah.
they're in bloom.
Yep.
But now, wait a minute, the ship, this cruise. You know? I know, I'm very short. Good story, now that I'm over it. I was terrified it wasn't it. Yeah. I thought they were going to.
All right. I'll go ahead and get started since it's 6 o'clock. It is May 5th. This is our Charter Review Board workshop. Lori, can you do roll call, please?
Mayor Young,
Here.
Vice Mayor Stone,
Here.
Councilmember DeAmbro, Councilmember Brandon,
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
We also have in attendance 3 members from our Charter Review Board, Abby Brennan, David Hudson, and Marcia Gilson.
Thank you, board, for coming tonight. So I think I'm not gonna really go through the agenda. The one I think change that was made based off the last workshop was those that were here thought that the 3-year term should be extended from 2 to 3, and that was made on the ballot questions. It was not made on the charter itself. It still says 2 terms on the charter.
Once,
We decide.
yeah, this will, because what'll happen is the council, if this moves forward, will have to give direction to prepare an ordinance, which will have all of this in it, so. All the direction given by the council to do whatever will be put into that document.
Okay, so I'll open the floor to any council comments.
None for me.
Thank you guys for coming out. because I missed the last one, so I appreciate you doing this again. So giving the opportunity to Aaron to speak. I have no issues with the consecutive terms of 3 years, or 3 consecutive terms.
I'm good.
Agree with that.
With that part, yes.
Any comments on any of the other matters? I know we talked about the vacancy one, that we were going back and forth on that quite a bit.
Yeah, and
And the
I've
runoff one as
thought about
well.
that one more, and I still hold strong with that's the people's choice. But if they were to even vote on the way it's written for the sample question, the part where it says failure to qualify, that means a candidate would, that's the beginning of a term. So an appointment, who knows when the next general election would be, especially if they vote yes to push 2 years to 3 years. You might have a while till the next general election, and thinking the national one too.
Well, but this is what we talked about, right? Even if somebody is appointed during what would be somebody's first year in a 3-year term or even 2-year term, the general election would still be that November. Regardless, there would still be a general election. So it would still only be less than a year with an appointed council member, right? Is that correct?
I think, can you confirm, so if it's a year, because if it does get switched to 3-year terms, there'll be a year where there's no March election,
From
so.
time to
I guess that's
time,
right,
if you have a
yeah.
3-year term, from time to time, there will be a year where nobody's seat is up for reelection. It happens, there's some mathematical formula where it every so often, though, it
Every
will
third year.
occur that we won't have anybody's term up.
But we still could have, during November when,
And that's the timeline I was
Regular.
trying to visualize, because that's every 4 years. So I don't know if it would be, heaven forbid, a time frame where that appointed person would be there for a while.
So it could be a 2-year deal.
And
before they get
it's
I
really
guess,
that
yeah.
part that's bugging me, is if
Tier
like
max, depending on, yeah.
if
what
it's in the very beginning of a term, that's the part that bugs me. I get it if someone passes away or something happens and there's 6 months, 3 months to go, it's that beginning. So it's really, that's the language that I don't love that's in there, but they can choose.
If there was a year there was no election, could it go on the general election on November or no?
I thought the way we wrote this,
That was
yeah,
our,
point
that's what I thought.
until the next available general election. So whether or not,
Available.
the way this is written, whether or not you're in a year where nobody's term is up, that appointee would still have to go on the ballot at the next available opportunity to run for the rest of that term,
Mhm.
whether it's 1 year left or 2 years left. So it doesn't matter the way this is written, whether or not any seats are up. So even if you had a situation where there was an appointment and at the next March, nobody's seat is up, that appointee would still have to qualify and go on the ballot to either affirm them serving the rest of that seat, or somebody could,
Bring in some
challenge them, again, for the balance of that seat, whether it's 1 year left or 2 years left, or 2.5, whatever is left. So no matter what, at the next available general election.
Right, so it would either be that coming November or the next March.
Right.
So it would never be more than
Right.
a year anyway.
Because we didn't say the next municipal election.
Right.
We said the
It
next
could be
general
November.
election.
And then my next question pertaining to that, if that were to be voted yes by the people, would we decide afterwards the requirements of appointees? Like council, how do they choose an
In
appointee?
terms of mayor and vice mayor?
Nope.
Or-
So if someone is appointed to fill a seat,
Right.
what would be the requirements of that person who's chosen to appoint?
Oh, the
So us five would sit up here and choose somebody. What are the guidelines? Do we just choose someone out of thin air? Is it someone who's been involved, someone that served on council before?
Oh, the process for appointing someone.
Do we decide that process after it's voted yes by the people? Do we wait, or do we do that beforehand?
I'm sure I understand. I mean, the way this would work,
I
so
know.
let's say Kyle resigns.
Right.
Let's say that this all gets passed, you now have 3-year terms, and Kyle's vote, wins the election in March, and then later that year resigns for whatever reason. So now, the four remaining council members have to appoint someone to fill that seat. So you would do that. Depending on when that happens, if it happens in time for that appointee to qualify for the November election, that appointee would have to qualify and run for the remaining 2 years of that seat. If they're not in time for November, then they'd have to do it in March. And then they would be on the ballot, and if anybody else, that seat would be open, anybody else could run as well. And that person would then be elected for the remaining 2 years. And so then there's no appointment left to do. The
Your
appointment
question was how
happens-
do
My
we appoint
question
somebody,
is
right?
Requirements
the
or
immediate seat
guidelines
filling.
to-
So I'll use the school board as an example. They had a superintendent that resigned. They decided to choose someone. It was someone that they know that they've worked with before. But what would our council's procedure be? How would we even decide? Is it someone that's
So the-
applied? Is it someone
So the
that's been
process would be
involved?
yours, what is required is that the person be qualified
Resident.
to otherwise, they would have to be someone who could otherwise run for office, so they'd have to be a registered voter, a resident of the village for
So would
1
council
year.
put a
You-
notice out that we need to fill a seat
Yeah,
if
the
you want to be
charter does not
appointed?
specify the process would be yours, so you could do that, you could put a notice on the website, however else you want to get the word out, you could require people to submit resumes and letters of interest, you could
You
have
could select somebody
interviews
yourself.
Okay.
at a public meeting.
So we don't have the exact details.
That,
It would
no,
just be
that
whatever.
process is not defined in the charter, that process would be yours
To define.
to
So if you-
establish and fine tune it and run.
Okay, so I mean, if that were to happen to be voted yes, then I think we would have to figure out some guidelines, because at some point, we won't be up here in the future, so it'd be nice to have something in place.
I don't know if that's a big deal. I feel like if we decide to nominate somebody, then the remaining 4 would vote on that nomination.
I mean,
I
for
want it to be
example,
I guess my point is, I want it to be transparent, though. I just don't want it to be, oh, we like that person that comes all the time, let's just make them that. I kind of just want transparency of it to be there.
Well, we could like that person
Yeah.
that comes every time, but we
Sure.
say, hey, this is why we chose this person.
I just
There's no
want to
problem
make
with
sure it's a little not best friends just coming and going in here, that's all.
Well,
Again, it's not something that's a part of this ballot question. I was just looking for clarification
yeah,
of the
that
process.
depth of detail is not in the charter, that would be a process that the council would have to approve as a council. And to Mr. Johnson's comment, that the circumstances might be that there's some person that the council really thinks is the appropriate, and there would be nothing unlawful about simply circumventing a interview process and voting to appoint the person. That would be a legal option. That would be up, I think, depending on the circumstances and the appetite of the council for whatever process you want, that would be completely yours.
There would have to be a vote at a council meeting,
Yes, it certainly would have to be a
public vote.
public vote, a majority of the council in agreement.
That's it for that.
Okay, and then, Mr. Bradford emailed all of us and had a good point that if the vacancy were to go on ballot and get approved, what are the terms? Like, if that person then, decides to run and wins, does the vacancy, the time they just filled the seat, does that not count towards their future terms, or would they get a year off their future terms if they were to win?
Okay, let me see how we wrote that. There it is.
I think that would be something that the candidate or potential new council member should just understand. Hey, you're finishing this term, and you will have, if the term limits are voted on and set at 3, you will have 2 remaining terms. If you don't like that because you want a full 3 terms, then maybe you should wait until the next election and do that,
Well, if they have to wait for a whole, what's the thing, would they have to, like, if they, wanted to do the whole 3-year, 3 terms, but they'd have to wait, I think the way it's written in the charter, they have to wait
In
a
my
term,
opinion,
not just a year, right?
in my opinion, the
Yeah,
way this
that's
is
right.
written, it says that it speaks about being elected to more than 3 consecutive 3-year terms. So if your appointee
Okay.
goes through the election process, they're elected to fill the unexpired term, then they could run again, and then they could run again.
That's it.
So strictly speaking, that person
Might not get a full
might
9
be
years.
shorted 1 or 2 years of their first term because they were appointed in to fill the
Right.
unexpired.
And like I said, that's something we would explain to them
Yeah.
before we move forward, and if they're not okay with that, then we find somebody else. I think that's the easiest way, instead of putting more language in and muddying it
Alternatively,
up.
you could add language that specified that it's 3 full 3-year terms, and then that would exclude that appointment term. You could do that if you wanted to. That would be the other way, that would be the way to exclude. So then that person has 3 full terms plus
Yeah.
a
1 or 2
possible
years.
2 additional years at the front end that they're getting extra.
I like it how it is now.
Or did you guys discuss that? If there was appointed a vacancy and,
No, I think that the whole thing is kind of like, this has only happened once in the last 50 years, so, no.
What if?
We frankly didn't. I think that Aaron's point is really good, that, you would go in knowing that, and I think most people who would go in,
Don't want to do long-term.
they take that under consideration. They might be like a former member who would, Abby might say, well, I'll just do this, and she would she'd be running because she had that before. The way it happened before, a long time ago, was when the ball was started, the council put out feelers in the community, and it was a mess. Because then everybody, their resume, I want Lori, no, I want Molly, it just became a real mess. And they wound up putting in Carl, who was the defeated candidate, but he wasn't defeated by that much. But by that time, it was so tainted, so you're better off not to do that, frankly. It's just, just justify it within the 4 of you and go with it.
I say keep the way it is.
yeah, I'm okay with it.
Me too.
Okay, and the other one, I'm still really on the, I don't personally like it, if there's a tie, no runoff, I think, but the residents are going to be the ones that would have to be okay with that, so if they vote it yes and it, it wins, and they're the ones that would deal with that. I just feel like that could be a punch in the gut to a candidate that worked really hard, and then it's just by picking a name out of a hat kind of deal. But I'm still, let the residents decide and vote on it.
Yeah, we wouldn't be the first to do that, and it would save, what, $30,000, something like that?
This year.
Right. Yeah, this year. I'm for it, and like you said, it's gonna be voted on anyway, so
Yeah, so
I'm okay with it.
they'll know that that's what will happen.
I'd agree, I'm fine with it.
Okay. Any other council comments?
Were we not adding a question about selling land?
I know that you guys talked about it last time, I read the minutes on that. Sounded like it wasn't, just due to timing of things, it could be an issue, and I would be opposed to it.
Any thoughts on it?
I mean, I would support that, because usually the sale of land, if somebody's trying to buy village land, if they want it bad enough, they'll wait.
I'm opposed to that as well. I just don't, are we waiting to election if we want to purchase land?
Yeah.
No, so,
No, I think last time we talked about if they could be split, and they could be split.
that's what I'm saying, I don't see,
Reducing our authority to do something like that, and there's no need to do that. People elect us to make decisions.
and those are decisions that sometimes can, they have a deadline.
Yep. I hate to handcuff future.
I'm against it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm in favor. And you guys did discuss that and your
We were
reason to.
split on that.
You
And
are?
I was for it. And the reason is that when you go back in the minutes, this Remembrance Park thing came up twice. And they did try to sell it. And it was by the grace of God that that went through. And then our missing council person went after it again. And right now, you have no credibility whatsoever on this issue out there. None. I had to send out letters to adjacent neighbors and go on next door to stop it. So I feel very strongly that it should be in the charter, but I was a minority opinion.
Just to say a few things on that. There's 5 of you, and you are elected by the people to do your job and to do things like that. Making something wait either for a referendum or whatever just doesn't make sense. I think you elect the right people and you do the job. What I think Marcia was referring to actually was not supported by the rest of the council. So once again, it wasn't going to be, one person cannot make a decision. Here, you've got 3 of you that have to make a decision. And if there's only 4 in the room, you still have to have 3 of you to make that decision. So I think when we were talking about it, we felt that from a business standpoint, from being able to move forward with your business here, that the council would be wise enough to do the right thing.
Okay.
Thank you both.
Yes, thank you. And did Frank set any comments?
Yeah, so he's been in consensus with what you guys have said so far, 3 3-year terms. He was against the referendum to sell or buy land because for the same reasons that he felt that council is elected to make decisions for the people, that they should, that's one of them that he feels that the council should keep. And the rest of them, he's in consensus with what you guys have said so far.
Okay. Any other comments? I think we're all.
I know the first presentation, I recommended that we add something if someone was convicted of a crime that might be an issue that caused conflict to sitting up here. I didn't see that added back. Or is that something that we would want to?
Beforehand or during?
I don't think I was here for that.
No, I don't think you were.
During their term or before their term?
Before, it's a qualification.
Like a background check, basically.
Not necessarily a background check, but I think you sent me an email on that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where we landed. That was a while ago. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I don't remember the results of that research. I mean, generally,
There was a
to
civil
retain
notice.
your right to vote, you have to either not be a convicted felon or have your rights restored by the state. So I suspect what I found was that so there you're gonna eliminate most convicted felons, and if somebody's had their rights restored at the state level, then to prohibit, to not recognize that at the local level would probably be a problem. I will double check that for sure though.
Yeah.
Because I remember that it came up and I remember we looked at it.
It was something
just
like
can't-
laundering money or something, something to that effect that you could.
Yeah. I don't, okay, I'll find that research and I'll circle back and let you know.
Okay, and then I did have one thing, and I apologize, this is the first time I'm bringing it up, it's minor. Is there anything, after COVID happened and people attend meetings via Zoom, I know I've attended a council meeting and workshops via Zoom, and I know there's language in there about how many meetings you can miss. Is it accepted, and does it need to be in the charter that if you attend via Zoom, it's not, you're in attendance and you're not being missed? Is that something we need to address since it's kind of a real thing now?
In my opinion, that doesn't necessarily belong in your charter. If you wanted to address that, I think that's more of a code or even a council policy issue. The state law touches, and the Sunshine Law touches on what it means to be present at a meeting, and certain things like the adoption of an ordinance or resolution requires, the language in the statute talks about being present at the meeting, and it contemplates a actual place that the meeting is where the public can go. When, as we had with COVID in 2020, when the emergency declarations were put in place, and at the state level, they lifted the requirement for that. We all went virtual. That was based on that temporary emergency order. Then when that expired, we were required to go back to this setting. Now, the interesting thing that happened is that although the meetings went back to being in a room where everybody, where at least the governing body had to be present, most people retained their, to the extent they didn't have it before COVID, a lot of people retained their ability for the public to, if not participate, at least observe the meeting via a YouTube or a call-in or whatever, remote technology access. So, but all that to say, I guess my opinion is no, it doesn't belong in it. That's something that doesn't need to be in the charter. It can change over time, and if you want to have to deal with, well, it's in our charter, but there's been an executive order that says something else, and having to explain the inconsistency. So in my opinion, it's not something that needs to be in your charter.
So if someone attends a meeting via Zoom, are they counted in attendance, or is it a missed meeting?
Well, under circumstances that we're in today, outside of any executive order that lifts that requirement, in my opinion, we're back to where we have to have, for a 5-member council, 3 members present in the room, and then you have a quorum and you can conduct business. The other 2 could appear remotely there, and as long as the technology allows you to hear them to hear you, the public to hear everything, they can participate in the meeting. So, are they present? They're virtually present, and they're allowed to participate, but only because there's a quorum physically present. So I guess that's the distinction. Yes, they're considered to be virtually present, but they can only do that as long as you have a quorum physically present. If you only had 2 of you here, then it doesn't matter who's out there. You can't conduct business at the meeting. So.
But with 3 of us here, the 2 virtually present can cast
So
votes?
Yeah, so they're present.
Fully participate, okay.
But not physically present. They're virtually present. And that only counts if you have quorum physically present.
Okay, but not, it just came up, because I know there's
Yeah.
missed meetings, the certain number you can miss, and
I mean, and that's
things
a
have
different,
changed,
and that's a different
I
topic,
don't know.
I'm aware of language I've seen language in other jurisdictions that kind of talk about if you miss a certain amount of meetings consecutively or a certain amount of meetings. But you can't just, if someone's elected into this office, that's not, I don't believe you can kick that person off the council. You could do that with appointed boards, like if you're planning and zoning board or a pension board that's appointed. If you have attendance problems with an appointed board member, you could put policies and rules in place that would allow you to remove that person and appoint a replacement. I don't believe legally you can do that with an elected position. The removal process is set by state law, and we even have that in the current charter and the draft charter, that municipal recall is set by state law, and that's really, it's a very difficult process, and the bad behavior has to be way more than missing meetings. It's typically what gets to what Hal's comments about committing crimes and dishonesty and that sort of thing. And then there's a whole there's petition proceedings and court proceedings. And that is one of those things that has been preempted. You can't have your own recall process.
May I speak for a minute? When somebody attends via Zoom, I have been including them on the minutes as being in attendance, and that's the official record. So
Yeah.
that's what I have been doing in the past.
Yeah, they're virtually present as opposed to physically present, but they're still.
Okay, sorry, I didn't want to go down a rabbit hole. I'm just, should the Mrs. 6 regular meetings in the charter stay
Where is
there, or
that?
that's
Where
on
is that?
page, well, it's page 11 of 25 of the agenda. Here.
I was looking for that, I couldn't find
Where are
it.
you at? Under mayor? No, right above mayor. This
Under forfeitures and vacancies.
vacancy, council member shall forfeit his office, convicted of a felony.
Yeah, so this one.
Maybe
It's the
12, yeah,
last
we
one.
left that in there. Let's leave that in. I want to verify the distinction between removing someone from office. That may be the way we have that written in here. 'Cause that's not really a recall, that's not really, you know, in this case, this is laying the ground rules for what is required at the front end, as opposed to something happening midstream and the people wanting to remove the person. You know, we never talked about that. I suspect.
I'm just curious. It's like if someone missed
No,
6
and-
meetings, can we be like, you've missed 6 meetings, you gotta go? Like, I don't, like, how does that work? And that's what the Zoom thing came into question, because I don't know if that's technically written, and I've attended via Zoom and think it counts as attendance and not a missed meeting, but,
Well, in my opinion, attending remotely counts as attending.
Okay.
For these purposes, certainly, because again, if you don't have a quorum physically present, then you're not gonna be able to really have a meeting anyway. So,
we'll look into that one.
I suspect that we looked into it and found it to be okay. I don't think, it's just been a while, but let me add that to my convicted felon for qualifying. I know we looked at that too. Okay, and that's 6. And that's 6, regular schedule.
So it excludes
And any 12-month
special
period.
meetings and workshops. You guys are all in agreement with that?
Yeah,
I have
that's
a
fine.
question.
Mhm.
Because we didn't see the final ballot, did you separate term limits and the 3-year terms, or keep them together?
They're kept together. Yeah.
Okay,
I know we went back and forth on that at the
Yep.
last workshop, I think.
Yeah, we did, and we decided to keep it
That's
together.
Yeah, we left them together in this example.
Mhm.
In terms of the making of meetings, we addressed it and said it's fine the way it is. You know, it wasn't something we didn't see. That's why I was saying, when I was mentioning that we can't do that, that was not the case. There are parameters in the charter that says if you don't, you know, if you miss this much, you're consecutive and all of those things. So I think we looked at it and just passed on it. It was time.
Yeah, we had a council member in my first year was out for about 5 meetings. Took a break.
I suspect that that's gonna be okay. It's old language, it's been in the charter. I don't have any reason to think that we've had unlawful language in the charter for the last 10 years. I will verify that. I will be surprised if I find anything contrary, having talked this through. But I will let you know on that and the other issue, the qualifying issue.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
We've got 2 that we haven't talked about in here, right?
I'm sorry. Which ones did you want to talk about?
Um,
I thought we were good on everything.
Well, I mean, Kyle wasn't here last time, so did you want to talk about the 1-year residency requirement and voter approval to dissolve police or fire?
So-
That's a big one. I think.
Yeah, it is a big one. I'm okay with the 1-year residence. I think that's a good thing. I'm not, so my fear is that if a police department or fire department decide to get public support to move and go somewhere else, might not necessarily be in the best interest of the village. And the council might be able to see that, but talk to masses to say, hey, get behind them because it's easy to do that. That would be my concern if something like that were to happen.
I feel the same. I feel like exactly the same. There would be a strong push one way or the other. It would
It would be a decision of the department
right.
versus a decision from the council.
Correct.
And that's my concern.
Yeah, I agree with it. I don't like that being on the ballot.
I think again, it weakens our authority as council members. We're put in positions to make those decisions.
Well, the council would still have to vote to put it on a referendum.
Yeah, it could have
So
public
you
pressure
guys-
though, which,
You have
Not a
public
bad thing.
pressure if you don't have a referendum.
yep.
So it's a second check, and I'm not trying
Yeah,
to
that's
talk
what I
you out of it.
was-
I
last
just wanna
time-
make sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Last time we
a fair
talked about it, I
point.
was okay with that idea, is ultimately it would be the council's decision to put it on the referendum. So that would be a block there potentially, but
I suspect the motivation for this, you'll recall, there was what started out as an attempt by the county to create a fire control district in Palm Beach County, which would have effectively, over time, for a variety of reasons, wiped out everybody's municipal fire departments. I think that this was an attempt to put up a barrier, because this would prohibit the fire department from being abolished without the voters saying so. It doesn't give the residents the right to circumvent a council decision. You would have to be the ones to initiate
right.
do we want to abolish our police department?
But if the next step was a general election, then again, who knows how long we would be waiting to make that decision, if we have to wait for that.
could be a year or two.
It's
Yeah.
not, I mean, the process
Yeah.
with something like that isn't, well, let's do it tomorrow, let's abolish
Yeah, I
it.
just-
But, it would be a lot drawn out process anyway, I know.
I don't believe, my opinion is that the referendum does not abolish the department. The referendum opens the gate or clears the way for the council to vote to abolish the department. So the way this is written, you would not even have the authority to abolish unless the voters said, yeah, you can do that if you want to do that. And if the voters said, yes, you can do it, you still don't have to do it. You can still say, no, we don't want to do it. So I think that's what
But-
the manager was saying.
So there's two steps.
It's another step in the process.
That's what I'm
It
saying,
puts it-
which could, I mean, if we all wanted to, like, just hypothetical, right? We wanted to, for whatever reason. And we had a majority vote to move forward with that, well, now it's got to go to a vote. I mean, let's say we decided on this in April. Now we wait till November, to see if it actually happens, and
That is correct. There
Right.
would- That delay would be built into the process.
yeah, I don't like that.
I'm okay with the delay.
I'm fine with it being on the ballot. It's such a huge piece of the village. We're not talking like, I don't know how to compare it. I'm absolutely fine with it being on the ballot. Because council still has authority in the decision-making with it.
Historically, the fire department was put into existence by referendum. And we have always, right from the very beginning, had a police department.
Well, the way I see it too is, I have no problem asking the residents, because essentially they pay for it anyways, and they utilize the services, and they expect a certain type of public safety for the village of DeQuesta. So for me, it's very respectful to ask them, and I don't think it's enough for 5 people who sit up here to make that heavy decision. Again, for me, the public safety is such a huge part of the village.
Financially too.
And that, right, so I mean,
So-
obviously there'd be, if that ever came to that, there'd be education that would be, I would hope, put out to the public as to what that sitting council was thinking and wanting to ask them, but again, it has to be a partnership between the residents and whoever 5 are sitting up here.
Yeah, I just, man, I'm
I
trying to
get what
think
you
of a way,
guys are
I'm trying to
saying.
think of a way to say this that doesn't make me look bad here, but here goes.
It could go either way. I see what you're saying.
It's, like you just said, it would come down to financials is what it would come down to. And that's tough to balance with sentiment, you know? I love our police, they've been here forever. It's tough to see the financial benefits. So that's why I like it staying up here. Up to the council, I mean.
What, did Frank have any opinion on this
Yeah,
one?
he thought it should go to referendum if we decided to do that, so that's where he stands on it.
And I do, and Rory does, so I'm close to putting
Yeah, I mean,
on.
I can go either way. I just have certain concerns where if it doesn't make sense, and then we put up a referendum and the voters say no, don't do it. And so, does the voters all have all of the full picture that the 5 of the individuals up here should have? Typically, they don't.
Right.
That would be a concern that I have. But then again, you know,
That's my only concern.
it does take the pressure off the 5 up here. So I'm comfortable in the aspect of the council member has the ability to put it on referendum and then has the ability to accept or deny whatever the residents say. So I'm okay with it on there.
Okay.
Okay. All right, and sorry, I did say at the beginning I wasn't going through everything. Is there any other ones you have? Okay. And then, just one more thought. When these are gonna go on the March ballot, not the November, right?
That was, what had been previously discussed was having this ready for the March 2023 municipal election.
Okay, and then I'm assuming there's information that'll go out so the residents understand why these are on the ballot. How does that work?
Yeah, so there'll have to be some type of a information campaign, and that was one of the other things that was discussed, is that we've built in plenty of time, you know, assuming this is on your agenda in June for first reading, and then July for second reading, and that's when the ordinance is adopted, and that's when the ballot questions are set. Then it becomes a matter of educating the residents about what the proposed edits to the charter are, what they mean, and
Does that come
Yeah,
from
get out
us
the-
or the
yeah, well,
clerk, or do we
so-
put another committee together for
well-
that? Like, how does that work?
Interestingly, there was some new legislation this last term that touched on spending local government money on educating people about ballot questions. So we're gonna have to make sure we don't step on that, but, you know, the village will need to obviously get the word out without violating that new statute. So, but I guess the answer to your question is yes, that would be, Village Hall will have to handle, you know, and with council's input and direction in terms of, you certainly can't advocate, you can educate, but you can't, you know, vote. You have to go out and vote yes for this. You can, here's what's going to be on the ballot, this is what it means, and this is what it would do. The election will be on March, whatever. And there are, you know, there are plenty of ways to do that. You've got your smoke signals publication, you've got your website, you've got council meetings where it can be announced over and over again for the rest of the year. There's,
So I guess it'd be nice, Jeremy, if you could work on some thoughts on that, guidelines, maybe some do's and don'ts, so we're all clear and don't break any law.
We'll do that.
So we'd be waiting until March, so if there is a newly elected council member next March, it would still be under what these current
a new
term
council
limits
person
and.
elected in March of 2023 will serve a 2-year
Right,
term.
no matter what, yeah.
That's correct.
Okay,
And they could potentially serve 11 years total.
right,
If everything's
because
passed.
after their term, that's when
Question.
okay.
Yeah, so this will take a little while to fully implement if it's adopted you'll get there.
Okay. Anything else? Board, do you have anything else you want to say? Thank you again so much for your time and coming out for a second workshop. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Make it to the playoff game.
Is yours tonight?
Yeah.
Or is it Saturday?